inside a courthouse.
Wow.
I got 7 p.m., Mr. Mayor.
Deputy, can we go one last time for everybody that's raised their hand for public participation?
Oh, Letty, Atia, are you wanting to speak? You were here, but I haven't heard you say anything. Did you want to raise your hand to be able to speak at public comment? I can't, Ken?
Yes.
She's muted. You've muted Letty, but I believe she was here early to be at public comment. I don't see her hand up though. Oh, you took the hands. But she was here before 7.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes, my husband and I would like to make some comments.
So can you hit the raise hand
Video. Sure. Just 1 second. Let's see if I can find that. Just 1 second. I'm not an expert at this, guys. Yeah. So raise hand.
Or start video.
No, I know.
No, you don't need to start video. Yeah, just raise hand.
Yep.
And that'll put you in line for when we get to public comments.
Raise hand, Lenny.
Raise hand. There we go. Did that work?
Yep, you're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ken, can we mute everyone but council members and then start one by one with the public participation?
Are we going to do Pledge Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance.
Yep. We're going to do the pledge first, but I just want to make sure we're all muted out. So Councilman Cosgrove, could you lead us in the pledge, sir?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
Which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
We have a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces, our first responders, and also for Mr. Doug Skelly's sister, Tina Bailey, who suddenly passed. Thank you.
So Pete, just to double check, I've got Katie, Walter, Chris, Mary Jane, Nahom, Mike Mayhew, Mike Gold, and Dave Lawson. I don't have, Doug is not here, and I don't have
Tom,
Tommy. Correct?
correct.
Okay.
Can we start? We'll just go down the list. Can we start with Peg first?
Okay. Peg, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
And Peg, can you say your name and home address?
Yes, my name is Peg Avery, 23 Hillside Avenue. And I was just wondering, are we going to do a reduction or a redaction and an apologies to Joe and Meredith Quantrill for everything that took place at the last town council meeting?
Thank you, Peg.
Okay, next.
Next is Valerie.
Valerie, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Hi, Valerie Walsh, 46 Maple Drive, New Milford, Connecticut. I just wanted to take a second to also offer my condolences to Doug and his family. I can't imagine what it's like to lose a sibling. So our family's prayers are with him right now. I come this evening to just take a second to thank Mayor Bass and our Chief of Police, Mr. Sirotto. I probably pronounced his name wrong, so I apologize. Without going into all the details, I feel it's important to just get a little bit of the backstory here. My son and some of his friends recently became feeling unsafe at our local skate park. They come there to skate, which they're very good at, and deserve the right to enjoy this privilege without feeling threatened. The kids are a pretty special group of kids, made even more evident to me recently when they decided to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. They reached out to Mayor Bass through an email that was immediately answered. The mayor agreed to hold a meeting with my son and his friends and also invite the chief of police to also attend to hear their concerns. These men were not just a sounding board for these kids. Together, they started brainstorming solutions, which are currently being worked on. So I just wanted to take a second here to thank both of these people, Mayor Bass and our Chief of Police. I hope that they also can make these kids feel safe in their own park, especially in a time right now where there are so few things that they can look forward to. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Diane?
Diane, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Bass and council members. I also would like to extend my sorrow for Doug and his family. It's a very tough thing to lose a sister. I've lost one myself. So I'm sorry about that. I'm Diane Clafe. My address is 25 Candlewood Shore in New Milford. And I'm here to talk about salamanders tonight. Yes, salamanders. I'm speaking to urge you to continue to fight for what is in our town's best interests in regard to the ongoing legal and environmental issues surrounding the Candlewood solar application. The project, if allowed to progress as its proponents plan, will fly directly in the face of a Connecticut general statute which states that such a project cannot threaten the existence of a protected species and that it cannot result in the destruction of its habitat. Quite simply, the project as planned will not only destroy an additional 115 acres of poor forest habitat, but also contribute to the demise of the endangered and protected Connecticut population of slimy salamanders located there. I urge you to continue to protect the natural environment we treasure here in New Milford. I understand that salamanders may not be as much fun as polar bears to protect, but salamanders would disagree, and I hope that you continue to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Who's next? Ken?
Thank you. Unmute, please.
Yes, I can. Joe, your invitation has been sent.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Joe Quaranta from 87 Boardman Road. I'm here tonight to speak about a discussion that took place about my family's farm stand last town council meeting. A specific discussion was on the agenda last meeting, nor were we allowed to participate in said discussion of inaccurate information put forth. Since the last town council meeting, I've spoke to the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and the Department of Consumer Protection. Please allow me to clear up some false information as to the rules you read aloud last town council meeting, Mayor. Number one, at roughly 44:28 into the meeting, you began to discuss what you thought were the laws in regards to food products. You mentioned vegetables altered from their natural state were not allowed. This is not correct. DCP, an abbreviation for the Department of Agriculture. Oops, hang on a second. Bear with me just 1 second. My phone's doing something funny here. Hang on 1 sec. Okay, thank you. So let me back up. In regards to the altering of vegetables, after speaking to the DCP, an abbreviation for the Department of Agriculture, they made it very clear to me that those vegetables, if prepared and packaged in a licensed kitchen, are then free to move around commerce at a variety of retail establishments, including farm stands. Number two, the sale of meat and cheeses. Mayor, you stated that the sale of meat and cheeses is not allowed without a retail grocery store license. This is not true. In fact, after speaking to DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, there is no such license. I've obtained an email from them saying that they've never heard of a retail grocery store license, and we would not be required to have one. It's a bit more complex than what we've discussed, and I want to take a minute to kind of break this down for you, hopefully do that in my allotted time. But dairy is regulated by the Department of Agriculture, and stores, including but not limited to supermarkets, gas stations, and farm stands wishing to sell dairy from a licensed facility can do so with a retail dairy license. We presented this license to the health department prior to last meeting, and they did not know what it was. That came of great surprise to me because every store in Connecticut that sells milk or dairy has one of these licenses. Meat, as long as it's cut and slaughtered at a licensed USDA facility and packaged at said facility with proper labeling, it is free to move in commerce at any retail store, and no additional licenses are required. Baked goods. Mayor, you indicated that in order to sell baked goods, one would need a bakery license from the Department of Consumer Protection, and later on in the meeting, the health director added a professional kitchen would also be a requirement. This is not true. Speaking to the DCP, farm stands, nonprofits, or any market wishing to sell baked goods can legally and lawfully do so without a bakery license. The only requirement is that the baked goods being sold come from a licensed manufacturer and prepackaged at the licensed facility. There's quite a bit more when it comes to the discrepancies in the statements that you made last meeting, but I think you guys get the idea. It's important to note that I have made many conversations with the health department, and they have admitted that they are learning and do not know all the rules. I assume that you had read what was prepared for you, as it is the same information verbatim that have been sent to private citizens expressing concern about this topic. I hope that next time a situation like this arises, again, that you understand how important it is to be thorough and present all the details and facts. We have asked the town for redaction based on a laundry list of false information and assumptions. One has not been offered, nor have we received an acknowledgement to our letter that we sent to you, Mayor. Many of us in the community feel it's not only owed to me and my family, but to the entire community. Thank you. Have a good night.
Can't hear you, Pete.
Next is Marjorie.
Marjorie, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Town Council. I'm Marjorie Feldberg. I live at 31 Hine Road in New Milford. I am speaking tonight as a 37-year resident of New Milford, and also in my role as a NCLC Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy Director, and as chairman of the Lands Committee for NCLC. I want to thank the Town Council for its past position in opposition to Candlewood Solar. I very much endorse the town's past position, and I implore you to continue to reject this project so long as it includes clear cutting the top of Candlewood Mountain. As I've said from the get-go with respect to this project, you cannot do one incredibly ungreen thing in order to do a green thing and think that the net result is positive or acceptable. You can't clear cut the top of a mountain, losing the trees that are on the equivalent of 50 football fields, and create a permanently ugly, ever visible scar on our horizon. You can't cause stormwater management issues, which may in turn cause lasting damage to Candlewood Lake. You cannot do this incredibly ungreen thing in order to do a very green thing of constructing a solar farm. It is not a net positive. Neither does this project work on an economic basis. in the long run, I believe that the cost to the town will not be offset by the payments from the project. And as I'm sure you all know better than anyone, it will not provide 1 kilowatt of green energy to the town. Lastly, I want to make one further point, and I do support Diane Claif's comments regarding the salamanders and other comments you might hear tonight, but I want to make one other point which might at first seem unconnected. The town council, the mayor, others are devoting inordinate resources towards developing a riverfront redevelopment plan. We are trying to, we have been so thoughtful about this, and we've developed a master plan, and we will be trying to attract new investors, be they residential homeowners or a hotel or a satellite campus or other or commercial developers to the area. And we are trying to attract them by highlighting the physical beauty of our town. But we have to be internally consistent. You can't sell your house by slapping a coat of paint on it, but leave the garbage in the front yard and think you're going to be successful. Similarly, we have got to be internally consistent about safeguarding and stewarding all of our physical resources. We are a gorgeous town, and we need to keep it that way. So town council, you took the right position. Please stay the course and continue to reject this. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. Next, Ms. Bailey. Ken, can you unmute Ms. Bailey?
Your invitation has been sent to unmute, Julianne.
All right, I'm Julie Bailey, and I live at 144 Buck Rock Road in New Milford. And I've lived in this community for almost 30 years and have really appreciated the strong volunteer tradition to protect those assets that really identify us as an extraordinary place to live. Often in partnership with our town government and its willingness to step forward and to take a very public stand in protecting those things that are really important to us. But I have never, ever been so proud of our town's government as I have been over these past few years for stepping forward and looking forward and opposing a project that makes no sense given where it would be sited. All of us support alternative methods of energy generation, but we support them when they're in a place that do not in any way denigrate what we have tried so hard for so many decades to save. I both fought for and against proposed projects that would shape our hometown for decades into the future. And when I decide to throw my all into supporting it or opposing it with the same amount of energy and dedication, I really look at three things. I say, does this project create real jobs for people in our town? Does it increase property tax revenues in a way sufficiently to compensate for anything that takes away our quality of life? And on the fourth thing, does it in any way enhance that quality of life that will attract new businesses, families to come and live here, and workers that the recent Camoin Marketing Analysis Demand Study said we need to make an extraordinary effort to bring in? And I have to say that on all three of those grounds, this massive solar energy project does not do any of these in ways that would make us proud. As I've worked on Sustainable Connecticut's the town's application for Sustainable Connecticut in 2021, I have been stunned at the sheer number of brownfield sites in Connecticut that would serve the purpose of siting a solar energy installation. But to really denude the top of a mountain for future generations to come in a way that can never be repaired or put back to where it is again strikes me as not a real good use of those rare assets that we have and that we can really position to do the kinds of things we want to do in the town in the future. And for that reason, I really commend the leadership and the town council and the mayor for their strong, unwavering support of this position, and hope you will continue to do so, so that the iconic mountain, which has really something that should be preserved according to our plan of conservation development, continues to be preserved for those generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mayor Furman? And can you unmute Mayor Furman?
Yes. Your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Good evening, Mayor Bass, members of the Town Council. For the record, my name is Liba Furman. I live in Colonial Ridge and Gaylordsville, Connecticut. I saw that the Town Council was holding an executive session at the end of tonight's meeting regarding Candlewood Solar. So I thought this would be a good time for Rescue Candlewood Mountain to thank the Town Council for your ongoing commitment to preventing Candlewood Solar to building its solar utility plant at the top of Candlewood Mountain. You know, as you know, Candlewood Solar will be selling the energy to Massachusetts-based companies. They have executed purchase power agreements with Fitchburg Gas and Electric Company, with NSTAR Electric Company, and with Massachusetts Electric Company and Nantucket Electric Company. These were all subjects of public hearings, a public process at the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. So it is clear that this energy is going to Massachusetts, not to New Milford or to Connecticut residents. And these purchase power agreements, they're redacted, but they can be found online. So I just wanted to, let the council know that. As a town, you, our town council, our mayor, residents, we recognize the importance of the entire Candlewood community, the lake, the mountain, the people who live here, the neighborhoods. Our current plan of conservation development lists Candlewood Mountain as a resource to be protected, as a natural diversity area, as an area to encourage preservation within. The proposed plant directly abuts and lies above the Candlewood Lake watershed zone, an area for water protection for the lake and for drinking water in the area. The plant would also abut and drain to Rocky River, which in turn drains to the Housatonic, which in turn gets pumped back up into Candlewood Lake. And Candlewood Mountain is also home to the Blue Trail. The DEP Commissioner, Katie Dykes, in May wrote, when she was denying the third time application for Candlewood Solar, that I have doubts, given the 3 prior attempts, that even an individual permit can be issued for the project. I have determined that if a permit is to be issued, an individual permit will better protect the waters of the state from pollution. Now, an individual permit is different than the permits they've been trying to get. An individual permit is to the site, to this actual site. So the commissioner says a more considered process with the opportunity for a hearing, which means now we can publicly participate in the process, is justified by the complexity of Candlewood Solar's latest proposal, which exceeded 2,000 pages, by the difficulties posed by the particulars of the site chosen, and the fact that 3 prior occasions Candlewood Solar has not submitted a proposal for managing stormwater that the department staff has found acceptable. The town's recent filing, which was sent to the DEP last week, it's a petition requesting that the commissioner have different kinds of hearings and things, but it has to do with the natural database review. And there was an accompanying Quinn report, who is a herpetologist hired by the town. They demonstrate the tremendous impact clear cutting of forests will have on the Candlewood community, both human and ecological. If Candlewood Solar is allowed to cut the core forest at the top of the mountain, neighboring properties, fragile environments, and wildlife will be forever impacted by stormwater and erosion, and the damage to Candlewood Lake's ecosystem will be irreparable. So I thank the Town Council for its continued support and the continued defense of our environment, our property values, and our town. And I want to say that a number of speakers this evening have spoke so eloquently, and I wholeheartedly support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Lena.
Next kid is Lisa Ostro.
So your invitation on mute has been sent.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa Ostrov. I live at 175 Candlewood Mountain Road in New Milford. And it's very nice to see everybody, and I hope you're all well. I'm speaking tonight because I cannot believe that Candlewood Solar is still trying and saying that they want to be our friend. And to thank Mayor Bass and the Town of New Milford's Council for its continuing support to defend Candlewood Lake and the residents of New Milford against a bad project. Nothing about this project has changed. Oh yes, they've been summarily denied their stormwater management plan for the third time by the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or DEEP. They've been requested by DEEP that should they ever return again, that they will have to file an individual permit, which has much stricter rules and regulations than the general permit they were hoping for. Nothing about them has changed, except possibly their desperation to get this project done. If it were a good plan, then we all would have recognized that. If it were a good plan, then the DEEP would have recognized that. It's not. Nothing they've submitted has changed. They're going to promise things just to be able to build this enormous power plant and ruin our mountain and lake and town in the process. There are still no benefits, but so many detriments to our lives. We need people who can generate permanent jobs to invest in New Milford, who care about our resources. I fear the devastating effects this power plant will have on Candlewood Lake and our communities. Candlewood Solar does not qualify to be our friend. We thank you so much for your undying support in fighting this project that's so wrong for this community. Mayor Bass and the Town of New Milford Town Council, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Meredith. Ken, can you unmute Meredith, please?
Meredith, your request on mute has been sent.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Meredith Caranta, 87 Boardman Road. I would like to extend our condolences to Doug Skelly and his family. I would like to take a moment to clear up some assumptions that were made at the last town council meeting. First and foremost, I'm appalled by the public lashing. Excuse me one second. Excuse me. Sure. Sure. Sorry, that was my almost 5-year-old. So let me go back. I would like to take a moment to clear up some assumptions that were made at the town council meeting. First and foremost, I'm appalled by the public lashing that occurred for 45 minutes in regards to our farm stand. It was 45 minutes of assumptions. Number one, I called the health department back the same day they came out to inspect our farm stand when we were closed. I explained to them that I had just returned and they may come back. They stated they had meetings and would contact us the following week. We never heard back. Number two, I called the mayor on Monday, 9/21, and asked for a copy of the said complaint. That was given to me on 9/24 via email. I asked the mayor if anyone besides himself and the health inspector had seen this complaint. He said no, and he stated he didn't know where it originated from. He said it was believed to be by mail, but the newspapers say email. After receiving the complaint and speaking with my counsel, I reached out again to the health department on Monday, the 28th. I spoke with Mike the morning of the town council meeting at 10:45 in the morning. We spoke at length in regards to the said complaint and the farm stand. We went over the anonymous complaint and the licenses we hold. We went over rules and regs and ended the conversation by him stating to send over all the information we discussed via email, and if he had any additional questions, he would be in touch. I then followed up our phone conversation via email, which was delivered at 12:08 on Monday, the 28th, 7 hours before the meeting. It stated the following. To recap our conversation from earlier today, here is my retail dairy store license through the Department of Ag. Here is my ServSafe license, which I know I don't need, but I got on my own, as my family has been in the food industry for over 40 years. I wanted the public to know I had been trained in sanitary practices, temp control, and best food handling practices when it came to the farm stand. All of this was explained via phone and email hours before the council meeting. Why, if Mike Crespin has 20 years as a health inspector, did he not speak up during the said public trial of assumptions? In fact, he said he was not allowed back and had no further communication with us. Not true. And he lied by omission. He had facts that would have cleared up a lot of the misinformation being spoken about. He could have very well stated yes. I spoke with Meredith and Joe this morning. They have provided the licenses, ServSafe, and we spoke at length about the farm stand. Again, why didn't he speak up? When the said complaint was put up for viewing and discussion, why were the licenses that I provided earlier in the day not up for viewing as well? The next day, I received an email after the town council meeting from Mike Crespin stating to recap our phone conversation from yesterday morning. So he did remember our phone call and received my email. Again, why wasn't this information turned over to the public at the town council meeting? I am very disheartened at the time to discuss the right to farm ordinance, and possible action on the agenda was used to speak about this anonymous complaint that hadn't even been substantiated. There are conflicts with zoning and the right to farm ordinance. I would hope as a mayor that if you saw a petition of over 2,000 signatures asking for farm stands be added to the right to farm ordinance, that a meeting of like minds would be called. Zoning Commission, Farmland Preservation Committee, and others that play a role in taking action. Maybe if this had taken place, then some real discussions could have transpired and some headway could have been made at the last town council meeting, sending it back to the Zoning Commission for a vote, then back to the council for a vote on approval. Hopefully more regulations won't be imposed. However, this didn't happen, but 45 minutes of assumptions did. We were not even given the right to be heard, and that is the most concerning of all. I have to say, I have never seen business handled like child's play. I would implore the people to ask for better from the members of the council and the mayor they have voted in. I would hope they would stand up for what is fair and just. Thank you.
Next is Phil. Ken, can you unmute Phil?
Phil, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Okay, this is Phil. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Phil Dobson, 165 Candlewood Mountain Road. I've been a resident of New Milford for 35 years. As I've been sitting here at the Zoom, which is one of my first times I've done this, I recognize a couple of things. Number one, I'm just so proud and so grateful to have a town council who's against the Candlewood Solar of what I'm speaking about. And I'm also very proud of the fact that we probably have the best looking town council in the surrounding town. So I thank you for both items. Everyone's already spoken about the Candlewood Solar, their opposition. Of course, I am as well. But I just thought I should bring a realistic point that's just occurred to me and what could happen in the future, and actually it's happened now. I'm in the process of downsizing my house now and putting it on the market. Fortunately, we are in a seller's market, so in that vein, I am very, very fortunate. However, my first potential buyer gave me a deposit. I said, this is great. And then 2 days later, they came back and said, no, they don't want to close the deal because they're so concerned about the solar project going on. Now, again, I'm sure there'll be someone else coming right behind them because it is such a seller's market. However, I'm looking down the road for other people. When this market does turn, we know it will turn at some point. That solar project can certainly be a major negative in real estate values. So I just want to bring that as a realistic thing that happened to me and something that you guys got to look down the road in terms of what could possibly happen. So I want to thank you all for your support. And this Zoom meeting is great. I may be coming up here every week then to see you guys. So I appreciate it very much. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Next is William. Ken, could you unmute William?
William, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Got it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, my name is William Carter. I'm at 2 Lookout Ridge Road in New Milford. And I'd like to thank also the town council and Mayor Pete Bass for your continued efforts to stop the building of an industrial solar farm on Candlewood Mountain. And I want to voice my continued opposition because I feel this is the wrong location to build such a project. There are so many other locations to build solar projects where we're not going to have such damage to the environment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Next is Jackie.
Jackie, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Hi, everybody tonight. I'm so glad that the council is behind I live at 170 Candlewood Mount, School coming right down.
I'm sorry, Jackie, can you repeat that? I missed that, Jackie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I missed your name. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jackie McCloskey, 170 Candlewood Mountain Road. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everybody, Diane and Marjorie, Juliana, Liba, Phil, Lisa, everybody. They've said everything I would like to say, and I'm glad I don't have to say all that. But the point I want to bring up is how this project is going to take years. This project will be coming down our road in trucks that are going to disrupt our lives. Our lives are going to be disrupted. Anybody who lives here is going to be disruptive because they have to go by everybody's home. It's dangerous because this is a rural road. We have dogs walking, we have bikes, we have people walking, running, everything on this road. It is, we still feel it's a rural road, and lately with the pandemic, it has felt like a highway. And with this project, it's going to even feel more like a highway with all those trucks coming, taking trees down the road, which is going to be very sad. And we've seen this before with something else that went on. And it's just saddens me. But I'm so glad that the council is behind this, and hopefully together we can, you know, do something that will not prevent this from happening to our road. The road is what I'm most, I've been here 20 years, over 20 years, and I love it. I love this road. I love this place. I love New Milford. And I'm just looking forward to peace instead of rumbling. So thank you all. And thanks everybody else for coming on and had to say, and have a great evening, everybody.
Thanks, Jackie.
Next is Jeff. Ken, can you unmute Jeff, please?
Jeff, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Jeff Winter, 22 Morey Road. I also want to discuss the issue regarding Joe and Meredith Quaranta and how an anonymous complaint was made public by the mayor. That item, as per the letter all of you received from Joe's attorney, which was posted on social media now, that would never have even been released under the Freedom of Information Act while that was an ongoing investigation. Yet, Mayor, you chose to actually put that out in the public for, I believe the letter states 35 minutes. That, I mean, honestly, it's not only unconscionable, frankly, it's probably a violation of the Freedom of Information Act. And at a minimum, the Quarantas deserve a public retraction and acknowledgement of the falsehoods contained not only in this anonymous complaint, but by all of the other statements that were made. I mean, for instance, all you have to do is go through the minutes, and where it says that Mayor Bass went into all the regulations surrounding what can be sold at a farm stand and whether permits would be required for certain items. We now know, of course, that that is not true. And essentially that entire diatribe at that meeting was based on falsehoods. Now the question is why did you go through all of this? It was barely noticed on the agenda. The Quarantas were not notified, yet it's clear that you put effort into this, Mr. Mayor, because you bothered to have the town attorney come on and discuss issues of trespass. And you had Mike Crespin, who rarely makes appearances other than at budget time or something that's necessary. And you made him do something that I've never seen Mike Crespin do, and that's discuss a complaint. I mean, it's absurd that you would put in all this effort if you didn't have a personal axe to grind. Now, I know that you claim that you need to clear up information on social media. Well, why do you have to clear up information on social media? It's not information that should be out in the public. And if you're worried about besmirching, which is the word you used multiple times, besmirching a long-term public servant, instead you chose to besmirch citizens. You chose to besmirch people who have gone out of their way to help provide thousands of meals to people in New Milford, to first responders, to those who are suffering through this pandemic. And you chose consciously to reveal private information and to besmirch these folks. I would ask the town council tonight to please add this to your agenda, because you all have received this letter and the mayor received this letter. You guys have had this for 11 days now, and it's time to be addressed, and it's time to be addressed publicly. Thank you.
Next is Letty.
Letty, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Yes, my wife has asked me to say a few words, and obviously I better do that. I'm not going to repeat what's been said. We live at, by the way, it's Mike Attia. We live at 48 Candlewood Shore. We live right on the lake in New Milford Bay. And I'm going to make one point, but I'm going to just give just a second of background, a couple minutes of background. We moved here 5 years ago. We had rented a house on Candlewood Isle, loved the lake, and then we spent a good 6 months to a year trying to find a place to live, and we fell in love with New Milford. And my wife found a very small piece of property, basically 20% of an acre, right on the lake. We knew it would be difficult to build because it was a tough lot to build on, very narrow, needed all sorts of permits, et cetera. But we never knew how difficult it would be. We had to work with First Light. We had to deal with the shoreline management plan. We had to work with inland wetlands. We had to hire, obviously, an architect and a builder, but a landscape architect, an arborist, a site engineer, a surveyor. We needed to jump through hoops to get our house built. And we did that for, as you would guess, two reasons. One, well, we had to if we wanted to build our house. But we really did it because we felt it was important, especially since we were right on the lake, to be good stewards of the environment that we were going to enter and be a part of. And we wanted to be a good neighbor and resident of New Milford. I think what Candlewood Solar has proven is that they are not good stewards of the land. If they were, they would have done everything they could to jump through all the hoops that were put in front of them, to do everything that they should have, to follow the rules, follow the regulations, do whatever they needed to do to protect this pristine environment. So my point is, you don't want a company like Candlewood Solar to be part of New Milford, because they have demonstrated they are not going to be good stewards, nor good neighbors, nor just a good company to be in our town. So thank you for your efforts. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Paul.
Paul, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Super. Boy, this is, I have a lot of tough acts to follow. There are some very well-spoken folks in the town of New Milford. My name
Paul,
is
excuse
Paul
me.
Elconin.
Oh, there you go. Okay, good. Thanks.
Yep. Paul Elconin. I'm the Director of Land Conservation for Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy, which is formerly Weantenog. On behalf of NCLC, I thank the Town Council and Mayor Bass for your continued opposition to the Candlewood Solar Project. The town leadership's steadfast and united opposition has been recognized by many individuals and conservation organizations that care about the future of Candlewood Mountain, and we truly appreciate this opposition and your steadfast and the steadfast nature of it. The Candlewood Solar Project represents a classic, quote unquote, rob Peter to pay Paul project. If built, this project will clear cut, which is removing, destroying, wiping out 33 acres of what is now pristine core forest and ruin the habitat values of another 82 acres of this same core forest. That's a total of 115 acres of forest that will be gone or irreparably harmed. And so why do we care about core forest? A lot of people have mentioned it. Core forests are the deep, quiet, dark woods that are rare around here. Core forests have almost 100% tree cover that lets in little light. They have lots of moss, deadfalls, logs on the ground, and a thick layer of duff on the forest floor. Core forests have very little barberry or other invasive plants because they are so dense and dark and far away from disturbances like lawns and industrial parks that our typical invasive plants love, and in turn the ticks love as well. Because core forests are dense and far from disturbances like houses and solar fields, and because they have not been timbered or disturbed for over 100 years, they are refuges for rare plants and animals that you don't find in the woodlot behind most houses. Core forests are not ordinary and they're not common, and they're in danger of being lost through poorly planned projects like this one. This is the reason why the state and conservation organizations have put an emphasis on protecting core forests. The state in particular has recognized the importance of these forests in the State Wildlife Action Plan, the State Forest Action Plan, the State Endangered Species Act. The Connecticut legislature has specifically highlighted core forests when considering solar siting, and the Northwest Hills Council of Governments in their Northwest Connecticut Next Plan has also highlighted core forests and considering impacts on them for solar siting. So Candlewood Mountain is home to verified 20 species of amphibians and reptiles, or herps as conservationists like us like to call them. Several of these species are rare, but the mountain is also home to numerous other birds and mammals that include owls, thrushes, foxes, hawks, and the list goes on. It's also a popular recreation area. Clearing the forest is tantamount to habitat destruction. It's what it is. And clearing the forest will kill much of the wildlife that's there or drive it out. To expand on why this project, again, robs Peter to pay Paul, the trees on the mountain are still locking up carbon as fighting climate change. These trees that are standing and growing are helping to fight climate change and will do so for decades if left standing. In order to install the solar project, you're going to cut down all these trees, and that will release carbon due to the clearing of the forest and destroying the habitat. So keep the forest. Candlewood Solar proposes to cut the trees, destroy the habitat, and sell the power out of state. This is not a good project for New Milford. So again, many thanks to the mayor and many thanks to the town council for standing strong in opposition to this project.
Paul, did I miss your address?
So I'm a full-time employee of Northwest Connecticut Land Conservancy. So our office is in Kent, 5 Maple Street, Kent, but we're a large property owner in New Milford.
Thank you, Carl. Next is Carl. Thank you. Unmute Carl's.
Carl, your invitation on mute has been sent.
call. Maybe turn to his wife Nancy, because she just raised her hand. Maybe he can't. Maybe she's having a problem. Can you unmute Nancy?
Yes, I can. Nancy, you're unmuted.
Oh, good. Okay, we can't get Carl's computer working, so he's on mine. Okay, good evening. Thank you for allowing all of us to speak on some of these issues under public participation. I've been involved in addressing the issue of Candlewood Solar since its beginning. And what it proves out is once you start scrutinizing and really addressing the substance of it, it becomes worse and worse. And I acknowledge and thank the town for its help in hiring technical people that can very effectively address it. What's happened since it got approved at the Siting Council, and which precipitated our appeal, is a series of discussions and interactions with the DEP, which have demonstrated how after three attempts to show that they can do a adequate groundwater analysis, that they were totally in default. So had we not gone forward and really addressed this in the techniques and the technology that it needs, we never would have gotten there. So I thank very much all of the support. And now what's really come out on top of all the other things that everybody else has been talking of as the core forests, et cetera, they have found that there's so many more salamanders that never showed up in prior reports. So now the other segment of the DEP is addressing the problems with that issue. So that I think that what's happened by addressing and looking into this, we've really noticed how bad it is. I've had a problem with it from the beginning, basically because I felt that it was a scar and a problem for the entire town. And now it's, the more we look at it, the more it becomes evident. So please keep up the good work. We need the support, and I appreciate your attention and your willingness to be aware of it. Thank you very much.
Carl, what's your address?
195 Candlewood Mountain Road.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That's all we have for public participation. Katie, before we move on to the consent agenda, I would entertain if you or someone make a motion to add to the agenda discussion of the Boardman Farm Stand.
Yes, I will. Before we move on, I need to suspend the rules to add to our consent agenda an item 3C, which concerns a donation to the Senior Center from Attorney Buck Taylor, and item 3D, which is a donation to the Youth Agency Child Care Program from the United Way. Then that's the first motion. If
Second.
Second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all those in favor with aye.
There you are, Pete.
Any abstentions? Thank you.
Okay, I also need to, might as well do all these right now, then I'll suspend the rules to add item 6C, which would be the discussion and update on Boardman Farm Stand.
I have a second.
Second. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Yes, I do have a question.
Yeah, Dave.
And if the mayor would be kind enough, I see Randy DeBella is on this evening, and see if that's the appropriate thing to do at this point.
Randy? Could you unmute Randy, please?
Okay, you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, what's the appropriate thing, Mike?
To add this to the agenda.
Could, sure, it's really up to the town council to control its own agenda. So it's if you want to add that issue, you can add it. 2/3 vote to add it.
Okay, very well, thank you.
David, what's your concern?
I just have concerns that this is the appropriate forum to address it at this point.
All right, I thought I could have sworn I heard during public comment that they asked us to address it. I mean, I don't know, maybe they missed something in public comment.
Well, although that may be true, this is my feeling, and I'm concerned that this isn't the appropriate forum for that to be. However, with that being said, perhaps there will be some conversation that will come out. I don't know.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the consent agenda, I'll move to approve items 3A, B, C, and D on the consent agenda with one notation, which I believe we can call a clerical error on the minutes from last week's meeting. The item 3C, the Sustainability Fund, where we voted on the total donation of $1,763.93. Stephanie, there might have been a glitch. I don't know. She just didn't hear the other item. There's actually a total of $2,262.42. What was not added was the $498.49 that another item that was a residential donation made along with that. So if everybody's in agreement, we can leave that as a clerical error.
Sure.
Yes.
Agreed.
So we have all those items I move to accept?
Second.
Well, for second, any discussion?
Yes, I just take this opportunity to say that the donation to the senior center is from the loss of Celia Buck Taylor. She donated various office supplies and furniture, including but not limited to office desks and chairs to the senior center for them to use. And the other item was $6,500 donated by United Way of Western Connecticut to the Youth Agency Child Care Program to help to provide scholarships for families who are in a bind to pay for the additional child care that they need with the hybrid system. So just so you know that.
Oh, very nice.
We'll send a letter of thanks, obviously, to both. And Katie, personal thanks again to you and the United Way for really affecting our child care program, especially in a time of need such as this. Thank you.
Try to help. Okay, so that's the total motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention?
I have to abstain on the minutes, Pete, because I wasn't here last week.
All right, so item 4 is an update from our special advisor to the council and the mayor, Dr. Jeremy Levin. Is he with us?
Can you unmute Dr. Levin?
Levin, I'm sorry.
Dr. Levin, your invitation to unmute has been sent.
Many thanks. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This is Jeremy Levin. I also live up on Hine Road, and so I have the great pleasure of living here for 37 years as well. Let me update you since our last update. There are several things that have occurred in the last month. I'd like to talk just to 2 of those. I think they're quite significant. The first is the new vaccines that have been developed and the side effects that we've seen and the halting of several trials. And the second relates to the delivery of these vaccines when they arrive. In the first instance, we've now seen 3 separate cases, 3 different companies, AstraZeneca, and then more recently, J&J, and more recently than that, Lilly. Each one suspend its vaccine trials. These, in the case of Lilly, it's not a vaccine, but it's another type of medicine. It's essentially one that you give to patients when they're already in the emergency room or in the intensive care. I'd like to say, first of all, that it's not uncommon for clinical trials, like for any kind of medicine, to have a side effect. What's critical during those processes is for the participants, in this case J&J or AstraZeneca and Lilly, to halt the trial, enrollment for it, to assess why they saw something. And that's really important. So as you read the newspapers and the press, please understand that although there were certainly 3 separate apparent instances, we don't know whether those are meaningful, in the sense that in the case of AstraZeneca, it appeared to be an inflammation of the spinal cord. The patient recovered and they went on with the trial cautiously. In the case of J&J, we don't yet know exactly what that particular type of abnormality was. We will find out. J&J is a highly ethical company. They will most definitely decide what it is. And in the case of Lilly, where they're developing antibodies which are injected into the vein to tackle the virus when it's already in you, we also don't know. Now, as I say to you, it's very common in clinical trials to have an effect that might not be expected. But what is that? What is the things that we, the town, should be watching for that could be significant? Well, the first is on the positive side. In the event that the vaccines re-enroll, I think you should have the trials re-enroll. I think you should have confidence that no company is going to knowingly develop a vaccine that could harm you. On the negative side, we really need to pay quite a high degree of attention to one salient fact, and that is the side effect that J&J is seeing the same as the one as seen by AstraZeneca? Because if that's the case, then both of these organizations, which are developing vaccines in a similar method, may have uncovered a very unfortunate flaw in the premise for why they developed that vaccine. And if that's the case, then that puts at question both of that, the entire approach of developing a vaccine of that kind. Now, there are 5 different approaches, so we don't yet know what that all says. And so I would say to you, as you read the newspapers, take a step back, let's take a look at that and see what it says over the next few weeks. And we will definitely know for sure. Now, with regard to Lilly and Regeneron, which is just south of us, are developing a kind of, it's not really a vaccine, it's really something that you basically cause a reaction in a mouse to figure out why this COVID creates a reaction in the body. You figure out what exactly that particular reaction is, and then you create a human antibody that you can inject into the veins of an individual who's already ill. And it appears that you get out of hospital faster. Unfortunately, the trials are very early and very rushed. So we don't yet know exactly what we have in hand in either the Regeneron case or Lilly. And it's too few patients to understand that. So I would just urge a little caution when we see this. This is common to see side effects. And I am still very confident that we will see a vaccine emerge by the end of the year, which is both demonstrates its efficacy and we'll have a good sense of its safety, and more importantly, which sectors of the population should should get this vaccine, because none of those are yet clear. We do know that the FDA has been quite clear about what it will or won't accept as a criteria for approving it, and this we should all be encouraged by. Now, I mentioned a second thing, which is really the distribution. Let us assume on the positive side that there will be some form of a vaccine developed by the end of the year. That means you know what you want to develop. Well, there are 300 million Americans. How do you get it to them? Well, the answer is not as easy as you imagine, because unlike the vaccines that you and I've had mine down at Walmart, CVS, I've had several, and they're all really good and they work beautifully, and we've got a good system already set up for those kinds of vaccines. The types of vaccines that are being developed today require that they be kept frozen at -70. Now, when you keep something at -70, it's not exactly the norm in Walmart or CVS to have a fridge that is going to keep something at -70. And so what we see in New Milford is replicated across the nation. The normal ability to distribute and to store a vaccine doesn't exist. This needs to be built. And there's a parallel process ongoing right now to establish what's called cold chain distribution across the country. This will take 6 months at best to fully put it into place. It's an effort that is being championed by under the nomenclature of Warp Speed. That program should deliver a distribution program, but it won't be ready. And the best guesses are 6 months after the beginning of the year. So while we are likely to have a vaccine, widespread distribution of those will not be present until the middle of the year, simply because of the fact we've never had these kind of vaccines before. And largely, 4 out of the 5 of the different types of vaccines will require 3 out of the 5, sorry, will require cold chain distribution. So I'll stop. That's a long discussion. And of course, I'll be ready for any time, any questions that you wish to put through the council, or I'd be delighted to answer them.
Anyone have questions for Dr. Levin currently?
Dr. Levin?
Sure.
This is Mike Nahom. How are you doing? I read through the document that was forwarded to us earlier in the week, and it, after the concerns that you said about the vaccines and some of the trials being stopped, it mentioned a lot about the EVAs, emergency use authorization, and that was the part was a little nerve-wracking to me that they might actually not go through the proper channels to get this thing out, weighing risk versus reward. And I just wonder if you can touch upon that.
Mike, very good point. There is a provision under the law whereby there can be an emergency use application and approval. Now, this is fine and good, provided that the criteria for accepting that emergency application sits in science and medicine. In other words, there are key criteria to any medicine or any vaccine that have to be satisfied. Now, the FDA has gone out of its way now to lay out what those criteria are. And so if we adhere to science and medicine, the chances of an emergency approval of that kind or authorization of that kind occurring would only occur if it were under the guidelines laid out by the FDA, safe and effective. If, however, there's any attempt to circumvent that through a political process, then I'm afraid we face a really rather troublesome situation. You will recall that hydroxychloroquine was approved under the same emergency authorization with absolutely zero clinical evidence that it worked, and in addition to which, it resulted in some very untoward results of some patients, and furthermore, millions of dollars being spent, if not hundreds of millions, on unnecessary clinical trials. I would say to you that, Mike, your concerns are valid. We need to watch very carefully, and an emergency authorization is not something that is taken lightly or should be taken lightly.
I'm sorry. Dr. Levin, this is Chris Cosgrove. So thank you for coming in front of us tonight. You're always just a wealth of information. I appreciate that. Well, a couple of questions. One is a follow-up to Mike's. So if there was some emergency approval of a vaccine, there's transparent hurdles that any vaccine must overcome to get approval. If one of those, even one, was not met, that would be obvious and transparent to the public. Is that a true statement?
No, unfortunately not. By rights, it's actually not the FDA that approves a drug. It's actually the Secretary of HHS, and who has no training in medicine or science. In the event that that secretary, as a cabinet member, is instructed to approve it, then it's quite likely that it might circumvent. Now, there is very strong and very clear statements by leaders in both the FDA and the leader of Warp Speed. Just for those of you who don't know the name, it's Dr. Monsef Salui, who have both, there are at least 3 Peter marks being in the FDA, and Monsef Salui are on record in saying that they will resign in the event that these criteria are not met. If either of those 2 individuals who are close to the details make a public statement or resign, or are unwilling to take the vaccine themselves, then quite frankly, whatever is approved at the cabinet level should be considered with some degree of concern.
Okay, great, thank you. And just one other question on testing, if I could. There was an article last month in the New York Times regarding the PCR test. And I guess different labs are doing it differently. There's a number of cycles you have to do on the sample, and the higher amount of cycles, the more sensitive the test is. And the crux of the article said that there was a lot of false positives. I think it mentioned Massachusetts might had up to 90% false positives. And I think since policy-making bodies are using this to make decisions on our economic activities in that, can you shed any light on this?
Boy, that's such a great question. I did not read the article, but you put your finger on the key element of all of the testing. What is its predictive value? In other words, what are the false negatives and the false positives? How do they balance out? So PCR type testing is exactly right. It does need multiple cycles. What that basically is doing is growing the amount of DNA. PCR measures the amount of the genetic material, and the more you have, the more accurate you are in doing this. If you've got any contaminants in there, it can really cause a problem because you suddenly see something that is inaccurate that wasn't there before. You might have low amounts of virus, and then suddenly you multiply, you identify something that isn't there. So you are correct. The big problem here, Mike, is across the entire United States, there is no standardization of testing, zero. So we, unlike other countries, and I'll give you one example in a minute, do not have the ability to accurately measure in different parts of the country with the same test, which is a positive or which is a negative. And that unfortunately leads to disparate decision. In our town, quite frankly, it would be quite fabulous if we could all use one test for everybody in the town and have a single set of data for us. And that would allow us, you, the town council, to make decisions based on real information. Now, unfortunately, we don't have that. There are still multiple tests being done here. We have good tests. In Massachusetts, I can't speak to what that will. I'll go and read about it and come back, and you should contact me and I'll give you a good opinion on it. I mentioned a national effort. There is one in Germany. It's completely different. It's very good news, actually, if it works. It's a kind of like a breathalyzer. You basically breathe into a test. It doesn't measure the virus. It looks for molecules that you're breathing out. And what it does is between 5 and 10 seconds, it tells you, are you breathing out molecules that are from the virus? Now, that appears to be a bit like Star Trek, but it isn't. It's actually used in chemical and biological warfare to detect minute amounts of toxic chemicals. It's now being converted to look at biological agents, in particular COVID. Now, if that works, we'll expect to see billions of standardized tests because it's just done on a machine which goes very quickly. And that machine is not in the United States yet, but if it works in Germany, which is rolling it out now across all of the major hospitals, and then they'll put it they're going to put it in several of the airports, etc. I think we can expect to see a change from what is PCR, which is slow, takes time, pretty expensive, to a apparently a very robust way of testing, are you really negative? Because that's what that test does. Are you negative? If you don't test positive in that test, you should be real negative. So don't have a good answer for your Massachusetts question. My apologies. I will check up on that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Other questions for Dr. Levin?
I have a quick one. I keep hearing the risk versus benefit and follow the science. And if I'm a parent of let's say a kid under 10 who it's been shown from the science and the numbers that this is not a very dangerous disease, and why would I at that parent take a vaccine that is not as proven as vaccines have been in the past because we're trying to rush it through? I guess the question I'm asking is for a vaccine to be successful, do we actually have to have all the people in the non-risk groups take it, or can we actually get by with just having the people in the riskier groups take it?
Fabulous question. Right on the money. Kind of like, one of these moments where we know we can't actually vaccinate the entire population. So who are you going to choose? And you have to start with those who are the most vulnerable. So I think that a lot of the consensus of those physicians who I've spoken to believe that a mass vaccination approach, while it might be desirable, okay, much like you do measles and mumps and things like that, is not necessarily the way that one needs to go to really get the economy going, to get the schools going. You have to approach this in the high-risk people. Teachers, for example, in schools, many of those people in long-term care, the very vulnerable who've got other disorders, whether they be young or old, those, and they're about, just to put a picture on that, for example, in the so-called rare diseases, there are 30 million American families who have a child who's disabled at home. That child is at high risk, but may themselves, of all sorts of things, but may themselves contract it from their parents. So the parents, even if they're healthy, should have it. So that gives you a picture of who might be the kind of people who get it. So I agree. I think your premise of your question is valid, that not everybody needs to be. I think the one point I would make here again is the failure to centralize the decision-making for that. And that leads to exactly your question, because we don't understand yet, number one, what vaccines are being developed for the different age groups, for the different demographies. We don't have that. They've just had, for example, an expansion of the Pfizer trial to accommodate different kinds of people, different age groups. We had the same with the AstraZeneca trial and the same with the Moderna trial. So what were volunteer-based clinical trials where they were able to look at younger people, they have no idea at the initiation of the trial whether it would help an older person. So even if your concept, which is right on the money, that you should be approaching the more vulnerable, were to be the case, we wouldn't know under the original trials that were being run, did we have a vaccine for them? Now that is being thought through now, specifically with the idea that subsets of the population should be vaccinated before others.
Dr. Levin. Thank you, Dr. Levin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Okay, moving on. Item 5, mayor's remarks.
Thank you, Katie. As we've done in the last few mayor comments, I'd like to first give the council an update on our COVID numbers as they are today. And these are numbers, as we talked about before, that are the total numbers since the beginning of March. This is not people that currently have the virus, but the state does this as a cumulative total. And currently, the state of Connecticut is at 59,237. Litchfield County is 1,861, which is up 11 from yesterday. Hospitalizations, thank God, are 0 for the county. So we have nobody hospitalized, so that's great news. New Milford is at 375, and that's been unchanged for the last couple of days. Today, the governor has updated his travel advisory, and these are the following states: Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Guam, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Puerto Rico, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. And as we all know, Guam and Puerto Rico are not states, but territories, but they are still in the advisory. And that is for those that are going to travel there and come back. The governor asked for 14 days quarantine, or if someone is coming to visit that you know of from these areas, they are to quarantine for 14 days or as many days as they are in the state of Connecticut. Also, quickly, a couple of things too. Today we raised the Spanish flag in our efforts to honor diversity here in our community, and that's for our residents that are of Spanish heritage, and it's their National Day, they call it. Also, Fire Marshal Kevin Reynolds wants to let us know as of today, the fire ban has been lifted. Burn permits can be used and issued. If you follow the requirements for the burn permits, you can check the state website at Forest Fire Danger Report. If you want to call Kevin and ask him any questions, you can do so at the office 860-355-6099. Also, I'd like to thank the New Milford Daughters of the American Revolution for the grave marking dedication for Private Samuel Phillips and Private Drew Phillips. Thank you to their wonderful endeavor of doing those grave markers. I was there, Councilman Lawson was there, Vice Chairman Francis was there. We had a host of dignitaries as well as residents. It was great to honor those soldiers for their commitment to our country and to our town. Also, here we have at Town Hall, we honored the family of Earl Norm, and he was a gentleman that lived here in New Milford, and he was a famous illustrator for Marvel Comics. But more important than that, he served in World War II with the 10th Mountain Division, and he created an illustrated mural that depicts American soldiers from the 10th Mountain Infantry Division returning from a reconnaissance patrol against the backdrop of the snowy peaks of the Alpes in northwest Italy during World War II. This mural is housed at the Military Museum, which closed. The family asked the town if we would like to take the mural, which we gladly did, and we're honored to do so. And it is now hanging outside the E. Paul Martin room. So when you do come to Town Hall, please come and check out this beautiful mural that was done by a wonderful war hero and illustrator, which was Mr. Norm. So we can't thank his family enough for that. Also, congratulations to Alyssa Assad. And she was a New Milford, still a New Milford resident, but also went to New Milford High School. And she was becoming a first fellows at Williams James College, which is a graduate school of psychology located in Newton, Mass. She's selection as a star fellow shows that Alyssa has demonstrated strong commitment and advocacy for increasing mental health access and support for underserved groups. Through the program, Alyssa will engage in culturally focused field training and community service opportunities, mentorship and career counseling services, social and culture and professional development activities. So congratulations to Alyssa. A great job. Shows what a lot of our young youth do when they get outside of New Milford, and they still continue the wonderful tradition of doing community service outside of New Milford. So thank you to Alyssa. Also, our library expansion project continues. The work that's in process, according to our clerk of the works, and that's Steve Vasquez, was they've begun cutting the foundation and slab for footings and piers. The HVAC units have been removed. The test soil bearings have been, they're using that for capacity. The two-week look ahead is they're going to install the new boiler capable of being converted to natural gas in the future if needed. We're going to do the form, footings, and the piers. So we'll be updating the council more as that project goes on. As far as our road work, roads that have been completed so far as we're winding down this year's road projects are McNulty, Old Parkwood, Polaris, Warwick, Short, Forest, Gretel, Mist Hill, Wellsville, Eagle, Carmen Hill 1 and 2, Grandview. The work is still being done. They're working with the contractor and they're also working with Aquarian. Long Mountain Road, they're continuing with the topsoil and hydro seeding and cleanup. Crossbrook, they've completed the catch basin top replacement. We'll be beginning the reclaim of the pavement. Kind of the look ahead for the next 2 weeks. Geiger and Gardan, the punch list and line striping. Brentwood and Cabo, we just talked about before. We're looking at a lane drainage repair with Aquarian. Long Mountain Road finishing. Wampum, Indian, and Arrowhead completing the punch list. Also continue to grade, pave, then we'll work with topsoil and seed. Also the police department, we did the driveway and sidewalk and we're completing the punch list for that. But we're also going to try and do before winter sets in, which is the second week in November. We're still looking at West Street and Elm Street extension, Thomas Lane to Orchard Heights. So we're still working on completing those and I'll bring that up to the council as well. Also, we're continuing with our Brownsfield remediation and looks both at the DPW sites as well as throughout riverfront areas. That's where we're looking for riverfront development. And I just want to let the community know, the town council, that we will be applying for a Brownsfield grant. And Tammy Rudin will be the person designated as a town authorized organization representative, and she will register that with grants.gov. I believe we have an opportunity to get up to $300,000 for that grant, and Tammy will be updating us that as we continue to move forward. So that's all I have, Katie. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Item number 6, under Mayor's office. Move to accept a donation from the POW MIA group of a flag. This is Kathy Shamili and the Connecticut MIA POW Forget-Me-Nots. The mayor's office would like to thank her and their organization for their generosity, but they would like, I guess we need to get the permission to accept it like everything else. So I make a motion that we do accept that, of course.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
They're a great organization.
Okay, and on Mayor's item B is you have a proclamation declaring New Milford Domestic Violence Awareness Month this month. Is that right, Mayor?
I'd like to read the proclamation if I could into the minutes. And I'll make sure, Stephanie, that Pat sends you a copy as well. It's whereas in just one day across the U.S. and its territories, nearly 75,000 victims of domestic violence sought services from domestic violence programs and shelters. That same day, more than 9,000 requests for services, including emergency shelter, housing, transportation, childcare, and legal representation, could not be provided because programs lacked the resources to meet the victims' needs. And whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole, here in this community, throughout the United States and the world. And whereas racism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, and discrimination based on physical ability, nationality, or other factors help to perpetuate domestic violence and make finding safety even more difficult for some victims. And whereas the need for safe house continues to be rated as survivors' most urgent need. And whereas the town of New Milford joins with others across Connecticut and the nation in supporting victims of domestic violence, as well as local programs, state coalitions, national organizations, and other agencies nationwide who are committed to increasing public awareness of domestic violence and sending a clear message to abusers that domestic violence is not tolerated in the town of New Milford. And whereas domestic violence impacts millions of people each year, but can be prevented. Preventing domestic violence requires the collective voice and power of individuals, families, institutions, and systems. Now, therefore, I, Pete Bass, Mayor of the town of New Milford, do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and recognize the important work done by survivors, domestic violence programs, and victim service providers, and urge all citizens to actively participate in activities and programs to work toward the elimination of intimate partner violence.
Great idea, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Pete, could I interject something? I appreciate you highlighting this, and I was staggered last week listening to the news that, and we all know how horrible breast cancer is. 1 in 8 women will experience breast cancer in their lives, but 1 in 4 women will experience severe injury from an intimate partner. And I was just staggered to hear that statistic. So thank you for highlighting this.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, item 6C is the discussion and updating on farm stands.
Thank you. Ken, can you unmute Town Attorney DeBella? Can you also unmute, let's see if she's still on here. Is Suzanne? Suzanne, are you still on? Suzanne Von Holt? There she is. Can you unmute Suzanne Von Holt as well?
She was.
Both have been asked to unmute.
Okay. Can you also unmute Joe Caranta?
Joe, invitation sent.
Can you?
I'm on, thank you.
Certainly, Joe. Can you unmute Meredith Caranta?
Meredith, your invitation has been sent.
I'm on.
We'll begin our conversation. Is there anything to state?
I'm sorry, Pete, I didn't hear what you said.
Is there anything else that you wanted to state to the council?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I sincerely wish that we could have done this last meeting because I think a lot of things could have been ironed out. I want the council to know, most importantly, out of everything that we may speak about, that personally, I had a very little role in everything that's been done with an organization that I'm currently president of in regards to helping a wide variety of community members with all types of things: food, generators, water, whatever resources that they needed. I want the council to know that it was my wife and my children and a wide variety of community members and volunteers. And I want to say thank you to them, because without them, I don't think New Milford would be what it is. They did an exceptional job, and I played a secondary role in providing them whatever resources they need in order to get the job done. And I felt betrayed by the town of New Milford last week. I think all of you pretty much know what has been done, and nobody ever asked for a pat on the back. It's just something that we've done here all my life. I've been here longer than probably most of you on the town council. I was been here for 43 years.
Sorry,
So
I beat you with that.
with the exception of Mrs. Francis, of course.
Joe,
So
I got to speak too, Joe.
let me just allow me to finish. I'll make it short and sweet. So
Please.
so before we talk about rules and regulations and all that stuff, I think it's important for not only the council but the community to know that, you know, last council meeting left my wife in tears. And I think that that's just terrible, man, for a girl who's literally spent the last several months of her life doing nothing but caring for people in the New Milford community. So I just wanted you to know that. And I'm here to answer any questions that might come up. And I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. Thank you.
Hi, I would just like to address the council and say I was in tears. To hear all of these assumptions being made and talked about like it's public information without having any facts behind them that I had provided to Mike Pressman this morning of the town council meeting really hurt me. It was just something I've never experienced before, and quite honestly, I don't want to experience again. And I don't think anybody should have to experience something as a public trial of assumptions when they don't have the right to be heard or defend themselves. My whole summer, even on my birthday, I was loading cases of water into people's cars during the hurricane. I checked on the crops. I tended to them. We tied numerous plants. I brought my children with me who planted hundreds of heads of lettuce. They started sowing them from seed. During the time of this pandemic, when all of this started, my family with the volunteers, we switched gears and we really tried to help the community wherever we were needed. You know, carrying this produce out every day in the 90-degree heat and starting at 8 a.m. in the morning some days and not ending until 2 a.m. in the morning some days, with everything that you have to do and being a mom of 3. I had to go get 2 cortisone injections in my elbow because it wouldn't even open from carrying these huge buckets of produce out. It wasn't something that, it wasn't work to us. It was a passion because we were knowing that we were helping people in need. And I think as parents, we all want to teach our children how to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, and to help thy neighbor and to love thy neighbor. And in a time of need, to not be selfish and think of yourself. At least I know that's what I want to teach my children. And that's where I was coming from always in helping the community. It's from my heart. That's it. That's the way I was brought up, and I will raise my children to see that. And I've been given the gift during COVID to see the beauty amongst the chaos and actually teach them how to give back and teach them how to be outdoors and to teach them how to not sit inside and play video games all day, but to actually do something, a life skill that I could teach them and grow them into amazing adults, as well as other community members. And everybody wants to help, and sometimes they just don't know how. So last week hurt me very deeply because we had this conversation and those facts were not brought up. And I think it could have been handled in a much more diplomatic manner for all parties involved.
Thank you, Meredith. Mary Jane.
So I would like to propose that we issue an apology, the mayor's office, you, Pete, and the town council members, to the Corantos. I felt, and even at the last meeting, I expressed an interest, I said I felt it was an inappropriate forum to have released all this information and to have discussed it at a town council meeting. I think it was just a violation on everybody's part. So I would really like to see a formal apology be issued to the Corantos on behalf of the town council and the mayor. And let's clear this up and move on, because they have done an amazing amount of work for the community.
Speak to your motion, Mary Jane. So first, Attorney DeBella. When I received this complaint, and when Mr. Crespin received the complaint, And when Mr. Crespin went to see Mr. Caranta, I believe it was that Thursday or Friday, and Mr. Crespin had just went down there to just talk with Joe about what the complaint was. And I'd like to provide a little background. So first of all, what's been portrayed and conjectured throughout this whole social media campaign that the town has closed farm stands. We've never closed a farm stand, ever. Town's never closed a farm stand. Never did, never will. Our heritage is in our agriculture. We never closed down a farm stand, never did. Mr. Crespin went there to ask Mr. Caranta about a complaint of which there was a health violation that was a complaint. So, Mr. Is that something that the health department has to go and check on? Randy?
Well, that's correct. Because a complaint is anonymous, doesn't immunize. A complaint that is made on a health issue has to be looked into. And I'll give you the example. Examples happen all the time in all the towns. There's an odor from a septic system. It's anonymous. It's an anonymous complaint. That has to be tracked down, found, and determined. So the reality is that a complaint being anonymous is kind of the norm, frankly, in these towns. But having said that, the visit by the director is a follow-up. And from what I was told, that he went there to determine whether or not the complaint was founded. So it's pretty innocuous, actually. Moreover, the complaint being anonymous is not immunized by FOI. FOI promotes disclosure. So the reality is that when a complaint comes in, unless it's a criminal complaint and there's an investigatory arm to it, and the state prosecutor is notified, that does not have to be released. That's exempt. But an exemption runs in favor of the governmental agency, not an individual, unless it's employment or medical. So the fact is the complaint is a public document. Whether or not it's anonymous, unfortunately, if it's anonymous, which they most are, they still have to be looked into. And from what was explained to me, the town did everything by the book. Now, when he did not, when Crespin went to the property and was told to leave, he needed to leave. And that's also true. If he does not leave or refuses to leave, at that point it becomes a trespass. But from what I was told, the facts that I've been given, the town acted within its authority and its obligations.
According to the pushed out on social media from the attorney law firm of Calodius, probably mispronouncing it, because that was put out on all social media today, not by the town, might I add. It just says in his highlighted thing, this is from attorney David Campagno. I may be mispronouncing his name, and I apologize if I do. He was just stating that, let's see, to our clients' understanding, only attempt in any actual site investigation is Mike Crescent, his assistant, bypassing chain driveways because the farm stand was closed, to walk down 900 feet of driveway to make contact with our clients, even though our clients were behind a 45-foot embankment and could not be seen from the road. Town attorney was not presented with all this information, enlightening the town council members of legal aspects of trespass. Is that trespass, Attorney DeBello?
It is not unless the property was posted.
Excuse me. Can I speak for a second and clear up something? So from the top chain where the farm stand is, there is a chain at the end of the driveway. Maybe a car could fit there. So he would have had to park at the chain and bypass the chain, meaning that the business was closed, to even go knock on a door. Now, where he knocked on the door, I have pictures. There's no way you would have seen anybody in a yard or anywhere around, because I wasn't there. and Joe was down back behind a 45-foot embankment. Now, Mike Chrisman said he walked around to see if anyone was there after he knocked on the door. He then proceeded to move his car from the first top driveway to the other top driveway, where they did park at another chain that's posted no trespassing. They passed that chain and went down a 900-foot driveway where they were caught on camera from the building down below, where Joe was behind a 45-foot berm. So yes, I do believe that that was trespassing, because I do believe, Attorney DeBella, you said in the last meeting that if he knocked on the door and looked around, nobody was there, he would have needed to leave. But that's not what he did. He proceeded to walk around to see if any was there over about 8 acres, because I think that's what's there. So 2 chains were bypassed. He knocked on the door. Nobody was there. Nobody was within seeing distance from where he was parked. And I have the pictures to show that you would not be able to see anyone unless you went on across the chain to walk down 2 closed businesses to find someone. Now, Joe's been working with the health department for I don't know how many years, 20 maybe? They know how to call us. And the phone number is right on the sign as well, right where they parked.
Andy?
No, it's not a trespass. Unless the director saw a sign and it says no trespassing, he knocks on the door. And by the way, beg to differ. You knock on the door, you can look around to see if there's somebody that might be around. When you don't find someone, then you leave. But the reality is that he was not told to leave. The man did not commit a trespass. Take it to the chief if you believe that he did.
I don't think we have to take it to the chief. My point is at that
You
2
haven't.
driveways that he was at, there is a sign posted, no trespassing, where they parked. Next to the sign that has our phone number on it, 2 chains are up. Would you, Randy, go walking down a 9-foot, 100-foot driveway to go see if somebody was down there if the chain is up? Would you not assume that the business is closed to the public, both chains? I would believe, as a consumer who goes to many shops and establishments, that if there's a chain there and I park my car, that I would be trespassing that the business is closed. Just, I don't know, that's just my take on that. So if he knocked on the door, nobody was there, he looked around, and that means within the area he's in and doesn't see anyone, he has to leave. That doesn't mean he knocks on the door and proceeds to go walking around 8 acres to see if he can find someone to talk to.
Hey, Pete, maybe I'm missing something, but why is this a town council issue? Shouldn't this be, if I saw the minutes right, it was referred to zoning? And doesn't zoning and the health department have to work this out?
Michael,
Why is this coming to us?
Michael, the issue is, it has nothing to do with zoning. It has to do with the fact that there was a tremendous amount of misinformation put out at the last town council meeting in regards to our farm stand. We were painted as some sort of cookie monster, salami slinging villains. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. I have a background in environmental work. It's what I've done my entire life. I have a very good relationship with all of these agencies. I've worked with them for 20 years, okay? We did all of our due diligence in opening a farm stand in order to generate revenue for our nonprofit, okay? The health department, they even admitted to me that they are not clear as to what the laws and rules are. I mean, you know, if Suzanne's on the line, and I'm glad she's here, because if she wasn't, I wouldn't even bring it up. But Suzanne and I had several conversations, okay? I explained to her I have a retail dairy license. She responded with she wasn't really sure what that license was. So I don't think we're here really to talk about the zoning component, more off of what transpired in the last town council meeting, because, you know, it made us look terrible. It made us look like we were some sort of, like I said, cookie slingers. You know, some
I have a question. I'm confused that if you guys don't want this in the public domain, why did it go to Facebook so quickly? And
Well, see,
that's the part I don't confuse. I mean, if you guys wanted it, if you wanted to work it out with the health department and whoever else you needed in the town departments, I don't know why it got to Facebook, and it was crazy. Even my wife came up to me and says, "What is the town doing to these poor people?" So the misinformation started with all the Facebook posts before you guys could have a chance to work it out with the town departments. That's where I'm confused. It wouldn't have even gotten to council if you guys, instead of going to Facebook, it just went down there and worked it out with Susan and Mike. Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
Well, I think what you're missing is that we want full transparency. This isn't the first time that we or our efforts have been under attack by people that have an invested interest for some reason. So actually this time we wanted full transparency because again, we are getting anonymous complaints. Our vendor 3 weeks before gets anonymous complaint. There's a bigger picture here than just my little farm stand. And this time we want full transparency with it. So yes, in my eyes and my husband's eyes, Mike Crespin trespassed. And then, you know, to move on from that, I spoke with him 7 hours before the meeting. You guys keep talking about trespassing. Why don't we bring up that he has 20 years experience? He is the head of your health department. He's your head health inspector. He got the information that morning before your council meeting. And he went on and said, I've had no further communication. I wasn't allowed back. And that's completely untruthful because I am the one who reached out after I called the health department, after he came out and trespassed to serve his complaint. I asked him to come back.
Pete, what are we doing here? Can you just fill me in?
Moment to finish. I called him back the same day. We were more than willing to work with them. They actually were like, hey, we have meetings. We'll get back to you next week. There was really no urgency that he had to walk around to come find us because they weren't urgent to come back that day. So then on Monday, I hadn't heard from anybody. I called the mayor. I said, hey, can I get a copy of this complaint? He said, I don't see why not. Let me call Mike and I'll get it over to you. 3 days later, I get the email on 9/24. I consulted my counsel again to talk about it and to get my facts together. Monday morning, I delivered the facts, everything that he needed to put that said anonymous complaint to bed. Instead, it was brought to the council meeting. It was made to look like we were cookie slinging. It was politicized. And we were stating the facts that was happened to us because it wasn't the first time that we have been attacked lately.
Okay,
Can I
where do we
ask
go
a-
from here?
Excuse me, could I just say something? I'm trying to be objective here, and I want to just ask a question. Meredith, did a member of this town council or the mayor post on social media about your farm stand and what was going on? Because I was under the impression, maybe wrongly, that it was other people in the public who, of course, we don't have any control over any more than you or anybody else. It's a public forum. But I'm just, you know, perhaps I'm missing something. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. So was there a member of the council or the mayor that posted something about you?
Yeah, there was private messages that were sent out by a
No, I'm
council.
talking, excuse me, I want to know, based upon what we talked about last week, about the fact you keep bringing up Mr. Crespin going over to see you and trespassing. From that point, which is what was brought about because some anonymous item was sent and whatever, did anybody on this council or the mayor post anything on social media about you, your husband, or your farm stand?
After the meeting or before?
You made the comment that you were being attacked on Facebook or whatever. Did anybody here put anything on Facebook about you? Any council or the mayor? Yes or no? It's a simple question.
I'd say I don't know.
I don't know. I don't spend that much time on Facebook.
And you're reeling off all of these things about how we did, and frankly, I don't think any council person nor the mayor did
Excuse me.
anything.
All right.
Maybe Mary Jane has something to say about that. Maybe she did. I didn't. But you
Maybe it
know,
would be more
just
appropriate for me to
say
answer that
something.
question.
So
Maybe
before this conversation goes any further and we end up in litigation, I would suggest, as I made the motion, to apologize to the Corantos for the way they were treated, because I in good conscience felt that it was horrible that what was done to them at the council meeting. And if anybody else disagrees, I'd love to hear from you, but the motion's on the table to apologize to them. Let's move on and stop this
Who
because
made the
it's not-
motion and who seconded it? I didn't hear a
I made the
motion. Who seconded that motion?
There's no
I'll-
second here.
I'll second it now.
Now we have discussion on the motion for the apology.
May I have a description of what it is we're supposed to apologize for? Just by the record here?
for the conversation that took place at the town council that was inappropriate and almost litigious. And I think if we don't resolve this and we have the opportunity to resolve it tonight, the town could be facing litigation. So do we want to incur more legal fees, or do we want to just say, let's move on from this. Let's hope it never happens again, because it was inappropriate to have this all discussed out in public.
I don't think there was anything inappropriate discussed at last meeting. The Carantas were the ones who made it public by taking it to Facebook in the first place. The town was within its rights to set the record straight, and that's what we did last week.
But you didn't set the record straight. In fact, there were facts that were left out during the public 45-minute of assumptions that could have been cleared up by the head, Mike Crespin, that morning. So when you put the anonymous complaint up, you could have backed it up with my licenses and my ServSafe.
And they had all their permits.
You could have given me the right to due process.
Excuse me, Mary Jane and Meredith, I just want to remind everybody, because we're kind of losing track of our time frame. On public comment, Joe spoke his piece, which is his right to do, and Meredith, I think you probably spoke as well. And they made a lot of allegations about our health director, the mayor, you name it. Anyway, so the mayor addressed those, because during public comment, we do not get into conversations. So the mayor addressed them, came to this point where we are today, and the mayor decided to put this on the agenda so that there could be some conversation brought up, which we've had. And I think that the rest of the council people, members here, are probably, like Mary Jane said, she made a motion. I think we're not going anywhere forward or backward here. But she just says, call the question. That's Walter's usually, he says that.
Mr. Mayor, before we do that, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I can't hear you.
Okay, Katie?
I just said what I had to say, and I don't know, Walter usually says this, but I've never done this before. I'd like to call the question.
Second.
But David was speaking while I said it, so if you want to let him say what he has to say, that's okay with me.
Well, it's similar. Thank you, Katie. If I could have the motion withdrawn from the person that made it, and I would be willing to certainly withdraw my second. And I think we need to table this and get it sorted out and just give us a report about it.
I agree, David.
It's a lot of public back and forth again, and it's just not what we're all about. And I don't think that Joe and Meredith are enjoying it anymore.
I have confidence that the administration will straighten this out to everybody's liking and inform us of that.
Councilman Lawson, thank you very much. I'd like to again offer to Mr. and Ms. Caranta, as we did when we spoke 2 ago and a week before that, to please come in. We'll sit down with Mr. Crespin, we'll sit down with Sharon and zoning, and we'll do whatever we can do to make this work, as I've talked about several times before. Joe, are you willing to do that?
Mayor, I've always been willing to work with you. I've worked with you over the years in various capacities. I'm always willing to work with you. Lately, no, I don't think that coming and sitting in your office like I've done in several times in the past, which have led me nowhere, I made the decision that no, I no longer want to have to come and sit in your office. Okay, I feel like I'm being called into the principal's office. It's an uncomfortable situation. And look, all I'm asking of this governing body is, after the display of unfactual information that was presented against me and my farm stand and my family at last town council meeting, I'm just asking you to say, you know what, Joe? We're sorry. We admit that what we did was wrong.
And I think that that would be a very good show of who you are as a governing body, because you know you're wrong, and the entire community knows you're wrong. So just man up, Pete, man up, and say, hey, Joe, I'm sorry, man. Sorry we did this to you and your family. Thank you for donating thousands and thousands of pounds of food to our people.
Okay, can we move forward here, council members?
Yeah, let's move on.
Thank you.
I have a motion on the table and I have not withdrawn it and I'm not agreeing to withdraw it, so.
Let's vote. Mr. Lawson, did you withdraw your second?
Well, they have to, the person that made the motion has to withdraw theirs, so. It's a moot point. It's a moot point.
Let me, guys.
No,
let
we've
me-
called,
one
excuse
more
me,
thing.
we've called, excuse me, guys, we've called the question.
That's right.
The question has been called. It's on the table. It's time for a vote.
Well, you have to vote on the calling the question first, and that requires 2/3.
We did, didn't we? Okay. Okay, so I called the question and it was seconded by Dave, or no, I'm sorry. It was seconded by
Walter.
Sorry. So that is the motion that's on the floor right now.
Those in favor of the call of the question?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
show your hands, please, if you want to call the question and vote on this and get it out way. Thank you.
Walter, are you for that?
Walter, you voting to call the question?
Call the question, yes.
So the noes?
Noes. Okay.
Is Dave, are you no?
What?
Is Dave
David.
no?
What?
Are you no on the calling the question? Did you vote yes?
No, I voted yes.
Okay, sorry.
Couldn't see.
Oh, sorry. Raise my other hand.
Dave voted yes.
Okay.
Any voting no? Did you vote no, Mary Jane?
I voted no.
Okay. Any abstentions? Okay. Next is Mary Jane's motion, seconded by Mr. Lawson. All those in favor of the motion, signify by.
Mr. Mayor, can you go through the motion again, please?
Yep. Steph, can you read back the motion, Mary Jane's motion?
Mary Jane's motion, let me go back to the very beginning, was to apologize. It was that the council and the mayor apologized to the Quarantas. I think that was basically it, wasn't it, Mary Jane?
Right. For the conversation or the discussion at the last town council meeting.
Yeah. Is that good, Walter?
Mr. Lawson,
Is this going to put this item to bed?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Oh.
Abstain. I wasn't here last time.
Tom Esposito should recuse himself. Tom Esposito should recuse himself from this vote. He's involved in the investigation and he should be recused.
Excuse me. I don't know where you get any more right to speak any farther on this. We've spoken. I'm voting no. You have brought a lot of people into this, Mr. Caranta, that were not supposed to be brought into it.
That's
I'm gonna vote no.
I would ask
Thank
you
you.
to stop speaking
Okay.
to me and my family.
Can we move
after
on?
the tyrant and
Excuse
slander
me,
that you did on
excuse me,
social
Meredith,
media.
and
You're-
anybody not a councilman, and please, Tom, we voted,
recuse
it's
himself.
over, right?
He wasn't even
Pete?
in the beginning of
The
the
vote,
meeting today.
vote has
Or,
happened. Can we move on?
Yes. Back to council business?
Okay, next.
Okay, so we're moving on to item number 7. I move to accept a request from Parks and Rec to close traffic from Route 7 onto Pickett District Road on Saturday, October 31st, 2020, from 5:25 to 7:15 p.m. for the Trunk or Treat event. Because it's a drive-through event, we're hoping to ease the flow of traffic and have all participants enter from the Rotary onto Pickett District, drive around John Pettibone Building, and exit out onto Pickett District.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 7B, move to accept a request to accept by the Parks and Rec, again, to accept a donation of a paint lining machine valued at $60 and some costumes valued at $100 from Children's Movement Center, 17 Pickett District Road, New Milford. The Parks and Rec Commission would like to thank the Children's Movement Center for their generosity, a line painter and costumes.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay, item number 8, motion to approve the job description for the full-time social worker and diverse community advocate position.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Pete, can you just go over this real quick and why we need this person?
So we have a person already. Her name is Maria, and she is actually speaks 3 different languages. Growing diverse population. Her focus is going to be more on helping that diverse population because of her language abilities. And so we wanted to make sure that was in the job description for the social worker.
And they have enough money in their budget to do it?
Yeah.
Great.
And Pete, my understanding is that there's some jiggling around of personnel, but starting next year, this will not be an additional headcount, right?
We have another person that will be going on family FMLA. So it will kind of be moving one to the other.
It is a much needed, the position, the person is there, but it's much needed to have somebody do this full time. If not before, which it was, but definitely now. There's a lot of people, as we all know, who have some issues.
I concur with Katie. Particularly, we have enough, with my experiences on the Board of Education, we certainly have been hiring social workers and we need more there as well. But we also have a population that's required to have a bilingual teachers. And I see that paralleling to our town, certainly full time. And on top of that, we have the anxiety, not just of our students, but of our of parents with the COVID going on. So, we really need to provide these services as best we can, and hope to beat this virus.
Great idea, Pete.
So I just want to say, I think this is a great addition to social services and desperately needed as more and more people are moving in to the area, non-English speaking people that need services. This is a critical, and I just can't say enough about, I think that it was a great job description and a great educational requirement, and hopefully this person will eventually work towards getting a master's degree.
Mr. Mayor, does she speak 3 languages?
Yes, sir, she does.
You got a gem here. Oh, yes.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 9, motion to discuss additional appropriation for the Candlewood Lake Authority for 2 patrol boats. It's a continuation from last meeting.
And we have Mark Tucson, he's on. And can you unmute Mark?
Mark has had an invitation sent.
Nate, is that an actual motion, or you're just discussing it?
I did say it as a motion. Move to discuss. You're right. I'm in the habit of saying move. So no, we're just going to discuss for now. And we can make a motion after the discussion if needed, right?
Yeah.
Can you also unmute Mark Hoffler and Joan Archer?
And my apologies, Mr. Mayor. Who was the third person?
Mark Tucson.
Archer and Mark Hoffler. Howard.
Thank you. Mark, your invitation has been sent to unmute.
Thank you.
And can you also unmute Mary Ann Gaffney?
I didn't see you there. I'm sorry. Yes, could you do that, Ken?
And
Mary,
sorry. And
Mary,
Steve Cooley.
and Steve, you said, right?
Yep, and Steve Cooley. Yep, and Nick Mellis, please.
And Joe Wodarski.
Why didn't you go on there?
Starting to feel outnumbered here.
And I think the last one is actually
What about Tucson?
Doug Cushing.
And Doug Cushing.
And the council, some council members had asked questions of the Lake Authority, and they were back those answers. Got an email earlier today, which Pat sent over to everyone. We'll take a look at. Does anybody have any questions for the Lake Authority?
I have one.
Go ahead, Katie.
I had asked a question about how many hours were on the engines that are currently in service, et cetera, and what the manufacturer's suggested life of the equipment was. And the answer is it depends on, you know, the amount and the type of use. Well, clearly I was asking about the use that you're doing. So the Silver Ships, Metal Shark, et cetera, et cetera. Based on our use, we found that our engines have provided 10 or more years, which is 4,000 to 5,000 hours of reliable service. Okay, so the two boats that you're taking out of service, how many hours are on them? Are they in the 4,000 to 5,000 hour range? I don't know where you are, Mark. I'm trying to look at you, but I don't.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so one of the boats that we took out of service, that engine actually was swapped onto our workboat, but that engine had 10 years, so that would probably be in the 4,000 hour range. The one that failed was 14 years old, and while we don't have an hour reading on that, we would estimate that one to have in that range, I would say.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, hey, you guys that are doing the CLA, how many other towns have given the 60 grand? Brookfield?
5 towns.
You want me to answer that, Mark?
Sure.
Okay, Brookfield has sent the 60K to their Board of Finance.
Yep.
The Board of Selectmen voted yes and sent it to BOF, and we will be meeting with Brookfield's BOF tomorrow night. We have met with Sherman, and they have asked us to come back to a second meeting next week. We have met with New Fairfield. They asked us to come back. We came back again, and they have tabled it to hear what everybody else is doing. Exactly. We have met with Danbury, and they have indicated an issue with having funding available at this time to cover this need.
So Danbury's not coming forth? Is that what you're saying?
At this time.
Okay, I'm happy to support it if the other towns pony up the cash.
Well, you can always make your motion contingent upon the other towns also contributing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Feeling as well.
So the question I have is, I guess in my mind, you know, this is something we have to do, but this came to us as a surprise. What are you all going to do to make sure that no future councils are going to get a $60,000 surprise in the future?
Well, do you want me to answer that, Mark, or are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, can I chime in? This is Mark Toussaint. I think, you know, I've been in front of the town council now for over 20 years, trying to tackle these types of issues, and it's always been a challenge to, you know, increase the budget more than, you know, 4-5%, if that. And so it's just been a very difficult challenge, and we found ourselves in a different situation this year, losing 2 boats. So I recognize that we need to be doing a better job of communicating with the towns to fund our capital budget so this does not happen again. But I think going forward, you know, I think this will be a good starting point to do that. But, you know, for over 20 years to ask for the type of increases that will fund this level of purchase has been a real, you know, a hard lift to be successful at.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be maybe after this, you know, all the towns are probably as surprised as we were. Maybe it'll be it'll be an easier lift maybe for future budgets to say, hey, we're going to set this aside for capital. And I'm not guaranteeing it, but that would also, you know, hopefully guarantee you're getting equal participation from all 5 towns.
Pete, if I may. Well, first of all, I would hope that the other towns do. 2 points I'd like to make. Assuming other towns don't, or a town or whatever, I would still like to go through with this and at least get 1 vote, because we're talking about, you know, educational programs, we're talking policing the waters, we're talking about keeping them clean, the whole works. This is something we really, really, truly need. Now, the only other thing I could say is to align our budgeting seasons. You know, we're done with ours, and we're starting a new one, and perhaps that could alleviate it so that, as another council member said, we won't be having a surprise, you know, halfway through the cycle or 3/4 of the way through the cycle, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd also like to say I'm very supportive of this. I know they don't come to us about little things. Always something big that's going on, the carp or, you know, whatever it is that, you know, that we needed to purchase and everything. But just so everybody's aware, I have to tell you, I've been on this council for a really long time. And there are people sitting right here on this board that give the Candlewood Lake Authority a hard time every single time at budget time. And anytime they came in with an issue, they got a lot of nonsense from some of the people sitting right here on this board. So, you know what, it's, you know, you can bring it up at the next, you know, budget season, but I can tell you exactly how it's going to go down. So I'm all for this. I think we should do it and get it over with. It's for the public safety. And as Dave said, for educational purposes, so we keep this lake a live lake instead of a dead lake. You know,
I so agree, Mary Jane, but I'm so tired of paying the fair share of other towns. They need to pony up.
They have ponied up, and we had
Well, they
years
need to
where
do
we
it here
were-
now too.
Excuse me, wait a second. There have been years where New Milford didn't want to pony up. So, and everybody else was ponying up. So, and it was before you were on the council, Mike. So, but there are people here that were very resistant to giving them any money. So I was there. I know the history. So just to let you know.
Hey, Pete, did you guys discuss where the money's going to come from? Did you?
If the council, speaking with Greg Ossipow, if the council chooses to make a motion to approve the 60,000, be it contingent on the other towns as well, leaving it up to the finance director to account to take the funds or accounts to take the funds.
All right. I have another comment, just, you know, along Mary Jane's lines. There's been years where we didn't pony up, but we ended up having to because of the rule that if the other towns, if 2-3 of the other towns do, we have to pay. So we haven't always ponied up our share, but ended up having to from what happens. If 4 towns agree to this, believe me, Danbury's going to end up ponying up. But don't forget the amount of tax revenue we get from those towns around the lake. Those things that's like 30 to 40% higher than the average house just from being on that lake. So we do get a fair amount of tax revenue from them. So 60 grand for this, I mean, go to that lake on a Saturday. We have to give them every tool possible to make that place safe. And if they need new boats, it's time to give them new boats. I understand. I'd much rather have them put it in a long-term budget. But as Mary Jane pointed out, we cut their budget tight every time, you know, and maybe there are other ways for them to fundraise, but right now they need to get this done. And I don't feel like pushing it off. We can put in there, if the other towns do it, then we'll do it too. But putting it off another 2 weeks means nothing. We need to do it.
I just want to make one more comment. I appreciate what they do, and I appreciate how they handle the lake and care for the lake and take care of people. They did answer all of my questions. I just want to say the item I brought up about the towing from one end of the lake to the next, to the other, was because during our meeting last week, last meeting, somebody said that there was a strain on it. So if you don't do it, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. And I'm sure that some people aren't happy if you tow them to a dock, but that's just being a good person. What I'd like to ask is that, yes, I understand that Greg Ossopow will find the money, but I think since the council people that are speaking about this are saying, you know, what about the money? What about the money? I would like an opportunity to really see where it's going to come from. To say that we leave it to the person who's in charge of finances, good, but I would like to know where it's going to come from, because ultimately something has to give if we take 60,000 from one place and we move it over. So I
$20 million surplus.
I think that it's, excuse me, what, Mary Jane?
Don't we have 20 million in surplus?
That may be, that's up to Greg. I would like an opportunity to see what the Director of Finance has in mind on where to come up with this. And I'm understanding the whole thing, that if everybody else does it, we have to do it. But I think as council people, we were put here to watch the dollars and cents. I want to watch them, and I'd like to know where it's going to come from. And I might be the only one, but that's my 2 cents on this. And I'm not saying I'm not going to want to approve it. I just want to know where it's going to come from, because when we make a decision to do something and spend some money, and then we find out down the road that something else gets tanked because of that money, I think we deserve to have an idea exactly what we're looking at on both ends.
Yeah, well, I agree with both of Mary Jane and you, but we do have that buffer of 20 million in undesignated. So with that being said, you know, that could cover if something gets bumped or this, that, and the other, but I do have confidence in our financial department anyway.
I have confidence, Dave, but you know, we say this quite a bit, and it doesn't seem like much when we're talking about it now, but that 20 million, you know, we are still in the middle of the virus, the pandemic, and there's going to be a lot of money spent yet, I'm sure. I don't think it's asking too much to just know where. And Greg is not here with us, and I would just, maybe he can just send us an email to explain it to us. That's all.
So why don't we make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to provide the Kenwood Lake Authority with a request of $60,000 to be determined by the finance director and contingent upon other towns in other member towns approving said amount.
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
I'd like to speak. I also think this is not a want, this is a need. There is a massive amount of traffic increasing every year on that lake. Being a former person that lived on the lake for almost 20 years, my brother still does, and many of my friends, it is like the wild, wild west out there. I've heard some very crazy stories from the last couple of summers, and I think we do have to support this. I also agree with Katie. I'd like to know where the money is coming from. And I would also like us to take this into budget season, and maybe we set aside a little account that we could tuck some of this capital money for the CLA when needed. They can come to us, but maybe we can allocate $5 grand a year and start setting this up so 10 or 12 years from now, we'll have the 60 grand, you know, easily in an account that has been developing when these boats need to be replaced.
Great idea, Tom.
Yeah, let's not wait. Let's not do this, you know, twice.
Right.
Like Mary Jane said, it comes up at budget, and now it comes up here.
Well, let's get it. Let's try to make it more prudent. And to Mike's point, this lake, if it wasn't for this lake, we would not have the property values that we have in this area. Not even close. And the amount of people that live on that lake that don't take advantage, they're mostly summer people and weekend people, pay an enormous amount of taxes. So thank God we do have this lake, and it is our responsibility to preserve this and to make sure that this natural resource stays healthy for a long time, and making sure it's patrolled right with the increased traffic, with the increased kind of abuse on the lake, I think is an absolute necessity. So I will be supporting this as I seconded on Dave's motion. As long as everybody else is in, I'm in.
Right. So the motion is that we give our provisional okay based upon the ascension of the other towns. We know Brookfield already, well, their finance board's looking at it, but that's basically what you said, right,
Correct.
Dave?
Correct.
There you are.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
And Mayor, you will ask Mr. Ospow to just give us an email and let us know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Kluge here from the Lake Authority. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you. And the things that you just said, that everyone just said, are so true. And if any of you were out on the lake this last Saturday in October, it was as wild as any weekend day of the entire summer. So what we're talking about is truly essential. And thank you for your support.
You're welcome.
Good luck with the other 3 towns.
Yeah, tell Danbury I heard they got money for a sewer plant naming they could use.
Right.
You guys are
Okay.
doing a great job out there. We appreciate it.
Thanks
you,
for sitting
everyone.
through this long meeting also.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Okay.
your time. We appreciate it.
Moving on to item 10, motion to move into executive session with Attorney Randy DeBella joining us. And is Vince McDermott with us also?
No,
Second.
Okay, so it's just Randy? Okay.
Ken, can you move or send a thing for the town council to go into the break room?
Separate room?
Yep.
Working on that right now.
Behave in there.
Thanks, Stephanie. You know.
What did you say, Stephanie?
She said behave in there.
We'll never tell, Stephanie. We'll never tell.
Oh.
The virtual room yet.
Yes, and I just want to be like the clock of London here. It's 9:26 p.m. Do you know where your councilmen are? And women.
That's my bedtime.
Yes, I know that.
Room.
Is this coming by email, Pete?
No.
It should be
No.
popping up on your screen in just
you'll-
a second.
Yeah, it'll pop up, then we will move into a different space.
And Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, it's all the council members and Attorney DeBella, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, there's additional people too, right? I don't know.
Nope, just Randy.
Oh, okay, just Randy. Okay.
Alrighty, that should be popping up in just a moment.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Hey, we're back.
Okay.
All right, Katie?
There we go.
Am I unmuted? Oh, I am. Okay. Okay, so we're out of executive session. I move to say there were no motions made, no votes were taken.
Correct.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Everybody's still here waiting.
Aye.
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 Take care, everybody.
Night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Do you think Laura Murphy was really sitting through this whole thing? She's still there. Good night. Good night,
Good
Mary.
night.
Bye, Chris. Bye, Pete.